I just want to do God's will.
What you're seeking is a blessing from God.
You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Now listen, I have 4 children. They're all out of school now. They all went to public schools. I went primarily to public school, finished up at a private Christian school in high school. But what's going on in our nation as well as Canada is concerning in our schools. And I think it's in my view and the reading I've done, it's sort of the culmination of decades of incremental losses when it comes to classical education. But there is a bit of a revolution going on. And I really, we don't talk about, education and what's going on with our kids a whole lot on this program, but I think it's important. And I want you to know some of the options that are available, whether you have kids or grandkids, or maybe you feel called to a role in educating children in a Christian way, perhaps, or just in a classical education, what we would call liberal arts, free arts. So I have an interesting guest today. His name is Chuck Wolfe. He's the founder and CEO of an organization called Faith Academics, and they are doing a lot. You're going to find out. And so appreciate you being a part of the show today. Please leave a comment if you haven't liked, followed, subscribed, or shared. Those are all great things too. People need to know that they have options. So we're going to talk about them. Chuck, welcome to Life Today Live. I appreciate you being here today.
Hi, Randy. Well, thank you for having me on the show. I'm glad to be here with you.
Before we get into the education side of things, I'd love for people to hear a little bit of your background, because I read your bio and you've got quite an interesting background. So give us a little resume if you don't mind.
Sure, Randy. So I actually grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania called Grove City. A lot of people know that because of the college that's there, a strong Christian college. I went to school at the University of Missouri and actually was a teacher when I got out of school. Became a believer actually through Young Life while I was in high school. And I worked at a Young Life camp in between high school and college out in British Columbia called Malibu. And that was the first time God really kind of put a calling on my heart. And I thought I was going to go work in the area of education, maybe at a Christian college. And so I decided, though, to get an education degree. And I graduated and actually taught middle school. But then for reasons that I don't fully understand today, but I accept as being what God wanted at the time, was He directed me to law school. And so I actually spent 15 years as an attorney, as a corporate attorney, working for large law firms, a couple of large companies, was general counsel for a national manufacturing company. And then in the early 2000s, God redirected my steps back into education, but in a non-traditional sense. And so I went to work for a proprietary university system, helping develop and expand a paralegal program, and then became president or director of 2 of their campuses in the Kansas City region. And then in 2008, I had an opportunity to join an organization that was creating an online high school in Kansas that would serve students across the state. And that is what kind of got me into the online educational world. And it's where I spent the previous 14 years working for a company called K-12, now known as Stride, to create a school. I was then head of school for a statewide program in Colorado. And then I spent 14 years as a vice president of school development, creating new online programs across the country. And it was really during that time that God gave me a deep appreciation and love for the online learning model, in understanding how it really helped those families and students that needed or desired that. And I always thought, this model is so personalized and individual focused that it would be tremendous in a Christian environment. like yourself, Randy, I'm a public student, public school graduate, but we did have one child that went to a Christian school and one child that went to a public school. And so I really understand the need for approaching education around the best interests of the child and how they learn and what environment is really going to help them kind of grow up and be best prepared for the life that God has for them. And so I always had this seed planted deep in me that it would be a tremendous thing to take an online model and create a Christian version of that. And then the pandemic hit and God kind of said, this is the time.
Yeah.
And so that's when Faith Academics came to life.
So what happened with the pandemic? Did you guys just explode?
You know, they did. And I think what happened, Randy, with education, it's kind of what I say that parents went through this phase of engagement, enragement, and empowerment, right? I think education had become sort of a passive activity of most families in this country, right? I think they assumed their kids went off to school and they were being taught and learned, you know, the basics, the foundations that you talked about, the foundational learning blocks of education. And when the pandemic hit, they had to all of a sudden become engaged in their child's learning, right? All the kids were sent home and they had to coordinate schedules and they had to make sure that they were on their quote Zoom classes. And so it forced parents to take a fresh look at what was actually happening in the school environment. It's like they had a chance to look through a window for the first time into their school and they were horrified by what they saw, right? They saw a system that was designed to promote the status quo and was really more about the adults. It really focused on the lowest common denominator. It was not about exceptionalism and pursuing academic excellence. It was wrapped up in this constant injection of social issues and ideology that wasn't in alignment with parents' values. And for the first time, they had to stop and say, what is going on? I don't like this. Yeah. What are my options? What can we do about this? And the good thing about this from our perspective is before the pandemic, Randy, people didn't know that online learning was really an option, right? What they experienced may not have been very good, but the concept or the model worked well for their child. They were maybe less stressed and more focused and more efficient and productive. And parents actually could have a partnership with their children in the learning experience. So the awareness increased greatly around online learning. And so that opened up, I think, a whole opportunity to present something new to parents in this learning model, but to do it in a way that was more aligned with their values and what they truly wanted out of education.
Yeah, well, you're being nice in the way you describe the public schools. And I'm going to ask you about the online experience itself, because not everything we've heard is positive. But let's face it, in the public schools, much of it is anti-Christian and, frankly, anti-American. And we're getting a lot of political agendas shoved down their throats, a lot of teaching about gender and sexuality that is either inappropriate, unbiblical, outright perverse. I'd probably be pulling my kids out of public school at this point if they were still there, because you're basically, you're maybe taking your kids to church for a couple of hours on the weekend, encouraging them maybe to go to a youth group, and then doing your best in the evenings at home. But the bulk of the development of your child, you're turning over to people that are completely antithetical to your beliefs. And that is a recipe for failure and disaster. So you were very diplomatic in your describing of the public schools. I'm a little harsher.
Yeah, no, but I think you're right, Randy. When I grew up, there was harmony between the schools, the churches, the community at whole, right? Everyone felt like they were working together kind of for the same common purpose and cause. Their values overlapped and intersected in many places, and now that's not happening. There is division that's happening, and it's tragic. And that's why our approach to education says academics are critical, right? Kids need to learn the foundational basics. And we believe they need to learn those from a Christian worldview with biblical truth integrated into that academic piece. But equally important in that is the development of Christian character and an understanding of what their purpose is, and how and why God made them to really serve this world in which we live. And so that educational experience, to me, it's got to be holistic. It's got to be in totality with what God expects us to be as his children, and living out the lives that he's prepared for us. And a lot of parents are struggling now because they can't find that whole valued approach by combining public education with what they might have at home or through their church or their youth group. And so I do think you're going to see this increased surge in enrollment in Christian education and values-based learning.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at some numbers recently, and that is already happening, and I hope that continues. And, as far as the public schools, I mean, I didn't expect the public school to teach me New Testament, or something like that. In fact, they taught Darwin, which still baffles me that we teach Darwinism in schools. He's the father of racism, but that's an aside. And then even in the private Christian school that I went to, they taught some theological views that I don't agree with now. I mean, but those would be secondary issues. So it's not a matter of this narrow, I as a parent have to agree with everything. Like a lot of it is, when my kids were in school, they would do all sorts of things to try to get the parents to come to a PTA meeting. We would have, the little choir thing where our kids are in elementary that would happen. But first, the PTA meeting, because it was like they were trying to get parents, please get involved. Now, they don't want parents involved because parents have seen what's going on in some of these school districts. And it's just bizarre. It's really been a bizarre transformation in the last, seems like the last 5 years have accelerated. But anyway, I'm on the sort of the curriculum. What are you guys particularly offering? I mean, do you get into some advanced levels, specialization of courses? Because that's one thing that's good about a lot of public schools. They offer some pretty narrow, almost college level courses.
Yeah, so we do a couple of things that I think are unique. So one, I worked for Stride for 14 years, and they're the leading provider of online learning in the United States. And they have spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing their platforms, their systems, their approaches, and they really understand what it takes for a student to be effective in the online learning world. And so I wanted to continue to partner with them to help use their infrastructure, and even using some of their basic core courses, because they've been designed around true effective online learning, and they were developed with a concept of core knowledge, which is actually almost a classical approach. It's foundational in its nature, right? So we take their courses, which are designed for online learning, but of course we bring in Christian teachers who then can take this curriculum, which is not Christian by a Christian design, but it is modular, and that allows us to pull content out and put content in. And so we can actually adapt it to a Christian worldview and bring biblical truth into it. So I like that from an online perspective, because we have a product that was designed truly for online learning. Our teachers come in, we do live instruction with our students. So there's a lot of instructional interaction between the student and the teachers. And so that's how we handle the core academics. But then we've developed a unique program called Servant Learner, which is where we focus on the character development and the life preparation. And our character piece is through an assessment tool called Faith Walk. And what we love about this, Randy, is that even starting in third grades, kids will take this assessment And it is based on the concept of character, not personality. So most assessment tools, whether it be like predictive index or Myers-Briggs, those are personality typed in their design.
Right.
This is a tool that's designed around Christian character. And then our curriculum is designed around that. And so we think it's critically important for kids to understand who they are made in the image of God, who they are from an emotional being, from a social being, from a community responsibility standpoint, and begin to develop awareness around that, and then develop that, and then help them manage that and grow that over the course of their time with faith prep. And then when they get into the middle school and high school years, we then begin focusing on career from a standpoint of calling, and what are their gifts and talents, and what has God made them to be and do. And so we want to make sure that as they develop their solid academics, they get a strong sense of who they are and how they're to behave and live from a character standpoint, that we can best position them for whatever their next step is after high school. And there's a couple of things that we do. One is called Faith Collegiate, and it's an early college program. And so we're actually working with a group where we're going to integrate some college courses into our curriculum. So every faith prep high school student will have a minimum of 5 college courses included in their program. So they'll have 15 college credits.
Yeah.
But then they'll also be able to take additional college courses for under $200 a month, or $200 a course.
Yeah.
So, most colleges offer, courses at $400 to $500 a credit, and these will be $200 or less for the course. And then we also offer something called Faith Pathways, where kids can actually take courses in career-focused areas, and maybe they want to get a certification in cybersecurity programming,
Wow.
or they want to get a medical certification because God's calling them into healthcare.
Yeah.
And that's a way for them to actually get into a vocational track early in life to either maybe help pay for college or to just go straight into the work. So we think that combination of character development with career life preparation is a really good combination.
Sure. Okay. Speaking of experience, I know not all of these, we did some junior college, not all of them necessarily port to all universities. Would these be considered accredited, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm building a portfolio of Christian colleges under this platform, and they're all regionally accredited. So it's groups like Oklahoma Christian University and Southeastern University in Florida, and we're talking with some others. And so, that's critically important that our college partners are accredited institutions, so these courses will transfer to those degree programs.
Right. Would it transfer to a state school like a Texas A&M?
It should, because most of these, they're all accredited by the same regional accrediting agencies that accredit those other universities.
Yeah, people are going to want to know that, because you spend money on a college course, if it doesn't help you, you feel like, been there. Okay, let's take some of the criticisms of online education, because we've certainly heard those with the pandemic. One of them being the isolation of students.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Families choose to have their children do online learning for multiple reasons, many of them very personal to either the lifestyle or needs of the student or the family dynamics. But a lot of families, especially Christian families, those children are already engaged in a lot of activities. It may be youth group, it may be athletics, or other sort of performing arts or training or whatever. So most of those students get their association and community interaction in a lot of places. I mean, the homeschool community learned this early on, right? Those kids are part of co-ops, or they're involved in church, or they're doing things like that. But the other thing I would say is that within the online learning platform, at least how we do it, kids actually interact with each other more openly and more freely. A lot of the barriers that sometimes exist within a traditional physical environment aren't present in an online world. And so there's actually an opportunity for students to connect with each other and connect with their teachers more directly. We just had chapel for our week. We had that on Wednesday for both our middle school and high school, and then we do our elementary kids together in separate chapels. But it was so fun seeing these kids be willing to share, be willing to share prayer requests, be willing to read scripture and interact, get to know each other. So the online platform is not a place where you're pushed into anonymity or isolation. It actually can be a place where you come together and have more genuine connection and interaction with both students and teachers.
Interesting. What about the measuring of progress? Are there standardized tests, or how do you?
Yeah, I mean, we actually embrace. There are some very well known assessment benchmarks out there. We happen to use Star 360. A lot of schools use NWEA as a benchmark tool, right? You want to know when your students are coming in, how well are they learning? And at the end of the year, you want to make sure that you've had academic growth. Like I said, our courses have a lot of instruction and assessment built into it already. So there's an ongoing assessment process with the course itself. And so we use a combination of those two things. And then obviously our teachers get to know their students very well and can see the intangibles of education and learning in how their students are progressing. Even around things with online learning, there's a lot of data. So you can tell how well are they engaging, how are they progressing, how quickly are they adapting. And what's tremendous about online, Randy, is that we can do live instruction on Monday as a large group, but Wednesday, maybe a teacher will pull a smaller group of those students together into a specialized learning class because they know that group is struggling with a particular math issue, right? Yeah. And so the online data can direct your guided instruction and really allow your teachers to focus in on where they need to at the individual level. So
what's the student teacher ratio range?
In our world, in the elementary grades, it's 50 students to 1, which is very manageable for an online teacher because you're not dealing with the physical space management issues of all the kids.
Right.
And then in high school and junior high, it goes up to 1 to 175, and in high school, 200. And then understand that there are some students in that mix who aren't going to need as much teacher interaction, and there are going to be some students that need a little bit more connection and interaction with the teacher. Yeah. But again, not everybody's. You go into a brick and mortar setting with 34 kids, the teacher is almost treating everybody the same, and it's very hard to get personalized with that group altogether.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, the teacher is doing a lot of babysitting. You're online, and a kid's talking too much, you just mute them.
Right.
All right. I want to show people your website. This is faithprep.com.
Yeah.
Faithprep.com. There it is. You can find out more if you're interested in this. You want to know more details. All of that is right there. And I encourage people to find out. And maybe it's this course, maybe it's another one. But there are alternatives, very doable alternatives out there right now. I want to ask you about results because you have been around long enough that you've graduated a lot of students. What are the success rates as far as career, college?
Coming out. So Faith Prep is a newer program. Okay. So we're just getting started this year, but Stride's been around for 20 years, and those programs have proven to be very successful for the students that go into those and embrace it. They graduate, they go on to colleges all over the country into leadership roles. In fact, a lot of people think that the online student is actually more well prepared for today's college environment because they've embraced the 21st century skills that are going to be utilized within the work environment in terms of collaboration and team building and the use of technology and problem solving and things like that. But what I will say too, Randy, is just that what's exciting to me about this is that this is not only a program that's impacting kids here in the U.S. and Faith Prep Academy, as an example, is a program that it can accept kids from around the world, but we are actually using our platform to help educate kids in developing countries around the world. We launched Faith Prep Asia this summer, and we have almost 750 kids in Myanmar who are in 4 different Christian schools who are using our platform to learn using their teachers in a blended environment. And this is during a time of a military coup where schools have been closed. And yet, by these Christian schools, by adapting and utilizing an infrastructure that is built here, they can advance education in a way that they never could have in the past. And so that's why I'm excited. You know, our mission statement is to help kids pursue academic excellence, develop Christian character, and discover their gifts, talents, and purpose to follow God's calling in life. And our mission statement is to impact the world for good through generation of Christ-minded servant learners. And that's even starting today. So the students that are part of Faith Prep here in the U.S. are actually impacting students across the world in developing countries by helping create the platform that's going to allow them to learn. So it's an incredible opportunity to see what God can do through this network that He's establishing.
A couple of quick questions. How I've heard from other homeschool, people that are advocates and involved in it, that it actually takes less time out of the day than like going to a public school. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, because now we expect, our students in general, especially in high school, are going to work 4 to 6 hours a day on their schoolwork. It is real school. But again, the instruction is built into the course, so there is an added homework on top of what they would do normally in the classroom time. And you've taken away the distractions of what happens before class and after class. And so that time is more condensed and effective for the student. So I absolutely agree with that.
So they can go 4 to 6 hours a day of studying, and then they're free to do social things, sports, church thing, whatever.
Right. And to be honest, with online, time becomes a variable. So if somebody has something that's happening on a Tuesday in life, and they want to work hard on Monday or Wednesday, the web is open 24/7.
Yeah.
So they have access to their school all the time. And their parents actually have access to everything that they're learning too. So together they can more effectively manage their learning process throughout the week.
Yeah, I can totally see that. What about cost? How does it compare to a private school or, because public school?
We've tried to be sensitive to this. So we our K through 5 is $6,250. And high school goes up to $7,250 as a private online school.
Per semester. It's
priced a little less than what the national average would be for a private Christian school.
Yeah.
And we hope that as it expands, that there may be ways for scholarships. Like my wife and I are committed in this initiative to work, like, for example, with the National Christian Foundation to start the Faith Scholar Fund to create scholarships that'll be available to students of need. But there are a lot of states that are actually adopting laws to provide for scholarships for kids to attend private schools. And that's a way for some of this cost to actually be subsidized as well.
Yeah. Are those per semester costs you quoted?
No, that's an annual cost.
Really?
Yeah, it's an annual cost. It can be paid over 10 months, and there's a $200 enrollment fee every year.
Yeah.
But we've tried to keep it manageable for families, to make it within their needs, and obviously, and when we decided to send a child to private school, that's a big decision, and there is a cost associated with that,
Yeah.
but it's also an investment, right?
Yeah.
And you have to look at all those different variables that factor into the equation of what is best long term for your child in the life that lays in front of them.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: are you getting any resistance from NEA, local government officials? Because you're in California, right?
Well, no, well, I'm based in Tampa,
You're in
Florida,
Tampa.
and Faith Prep Academy serves kids all over the country. And then we actually then do partner with Christian schools in certain states to have state programs.
Okay.
So we have Faith Prep Florida, Faith Prep California, Indiana. No, we're not getting any pushback. Most of the pushback is around the use of, quote, public funds for private
Right.
education. But the Supreme Court in the last several years has kind of cleared the deck for that. And that's why I think you're going to see more and more states adopting that. Now, what we're seeing, Randy, is I'm seeing public school teachers who have tremendously loved the profession that God has called them, struggling to exist within that environment.
I guess so.
And I'm getting resumes every week from
Wow.
teachers who want to come work for me because they can't live out their faith. They're being asked to do things and teach things that just are incongruent with their faith, and that's where the pressure is building. It's not going to be directly at us. It's going to be at the Christian teachers who are part of the public system.
All right, last question for you, because this is exciting, and if someone wishes they can get their kid into this, but they think that they may not have the funds to do it, I would suggest that you may talk to some people, because there are a lot of people, I think, willing to help build this kind of thing as an alternative. I mean, do you guys accept donations or scholarship funds if someone wanted to give?
Yeah, we would have a way of doing that. We're working on setting up like I said, a scholarship fund with the National Christian Foundation,
Yeah.
a donor advised fund that people could give to, and then also a 501c3 that we're working with. And I think, Randy, there are churches that maybe say, hey, we would love to start a school, but I would suggest look at just being a micro school that's part of a larger network. You don't then have all of the costs associated with that, and that potentially creates a way to lower the cost to those families as well.
Oh, yeah. No, I have no doubt that there are a lot of people in churches that if the church didn't have a full school, but they were doing the online thing, and then maybe they had, group activities for the kids, social activities and things like that, that there are other people in the church that would gladly scholarship a kid to rescue them from their public schools in some areas.
And we are actually working on a model that will be able to offer our courses part-time as well. So maybe somebody just wanted 2 or 3 courses with a teacher, or maybe they wanted our courses without the teacher, or they wanted our Faith Walk character course, right? As an example. So we will be expanding our model to accommodate the broad spectrum of the educational market, because that's where it's going. I think, just like we curate our entertainment, like I've got probably five different faith apps that I use as part of my daily devotional quiet time routine. And I get my entertainment from different sources. Education's going to be the same thing. People are going to be able to pull from these different platforms and programs to curate what is the best educational experience for their child.
Yeah, I got my YouVersion. I got my PureFlix. I get it. This was actually my last question. I just hadn't gotten to it yet. What does a parent do or grandparent do that wants to pursue this? Just go to the website?
Yeah, they can just go to faithprep.com. You can see the different schools that we have. If you're in Florida, Indiana, or California, There's a unique program just for that state. But it's the exact same program. So faith prep across the country is the same. It's just that we've structured it for some of the different states for unique purposes. So they can just go and learn about the program, and they can find out how to get more information and enroll. As a private school, you can enroll at any time, or you can come in at the semester.
But you don't have to be in those states to be a part of this, correct?
No, faith prep can take anyone from around the U.S. or most countries around the world.
Yeah, love it. All right. Is there anything that I missed that people need to know? I appreciate it. This is great information, by the way.
No, Randy, I appreciate you having me on the show, and we're just excited to be part of the growing movement. We know that a full-time online program may not be the right fit for everybody, but we think that working together, that there's a growing cooperative effort and movement to make education more personalized, more price-focused, and really to help raise up leaders for the next generation who are going to kind of keep our values where they need to be, and the values upon which our country was founded, and upon which our faith is developed to do great things, not just for our country, but for countries around the world.
Well, and again, you're very gracious and nice. I would say save your children from public schools, people. We could do this. Check out faithprep.com. If you know somebody that might be interested, share the website, share this discussion. It'll help them, and we can do it. We can raise our kids right, and we can raise them smart. We'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.
Like I've been to the mountaintop.